You are never alone with a crying baby. Not for a single second. There is always someone, an aunt, a grandmother, an older child, a neighbor from the next fire, ready to reach out and take the weight from your arms. The baby passes between hands like something shared, something belonging to everyone. You do not raise this child. Your entire band raises this child. For roughly 300,000 years, this was not a parenting philosophy. This was survival architecture. Today, a new parent in a modern city might go days without another adult touching their child. They read books. They follow schedules. They stress alone at 3 in the morning in a quiet apartment while a baby screams and nothing makes sense. And somewhere in the back of that exhausted brain, a very old part of them is asking, why does this feel so wrong? Because it is wrong. Not morally, biologically. Your body was never designed to do this alone. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer HRDY spent decades studying what she calls cooperative breeding, the idea that humans are unique among great apes precisely because we did not evolve to raise children in isolated pairs. In her landmark work, she documented how human infants are the only great ape young that readily make eye contact with, smile at, and reach toward strangers. A chimpanzee infant clings to its mother and refuses all others. A human baby looks around the fire and seems to be asking, who else is here for me? That difference is not accidental. It is the result of hundreds of thousands of years of selection pressure. Your ancestors lived in bands of roughly 25 to 50 people. They were almost certainly related, cousins, siblings, parents, grandparents, all within shouting distance at all times. The infant born into that group was not just one family's concern. That child represented the band's future. More hands meant more survival. More eyes meant fewer accidents. And so the behavior evolved on both sides. Infants who solicited care from multiple adults survived more often, and adults who responded to infants that weren't biologically theirs passed on a culture of communal investment. HRDY calls these helpers alloparents, from the Greek allo, meaning other. Not the mother, not the father, but the others. And in a hunter-gatherer band, alloparents were everywhere. Grandmothers, in particular, played a role so critical that evolutionary biologist Kristen Hawkes built an entire theory around it. The grandmother hypothesis, developed through her fieldwork with the Hadza people of Tanzania in the 1980s and 1990s, proposes that human longevity, the fact that women live decades past their reproductive years, exists specifically because grandmothers who helped feed and protect grandchildren dramatically increased those children's survival rates. In other species, females typically die shortly after their reproductive years end. In humans, that extra 30 or 40 years of postmenopausal life is almost certainly not an accident. Your great-grandmother's great-grandmother didn't retire. She dug tubers. She carried water. She watched children while their mothers foraged. She was, in a very direct sense, the reason some of your ancestors survived at all. So let's reconstruct a day. Not an ideal day. Just a day. It's early morning on a savanna somewhere in what is now East Africa. The fire from the night before is still glowing low. Around it, the band is waking slowly, adults stretching, children stirring in the warm press of bodies. A baby woke twice in the night, and was nursed twice, but 2 other women in the group are also nursing infants of their own. When one baby fussed and couldn't be settled, a grandmother took it, walked slow circles, hummed something low and repetitive until the crying stopped. No one tracked this. No one called it parenting support. It was just what happened when a baby cried. The mother of this child will spend part of today foraging. She will go with other women, including her sister and an older girl who is maybe 11 or 12 and who carries the baby on her hip the way she has been doing since she was 7. The baby is accustomed to this. The baby has been held by at least 8 different people in the past week. The baby, at 4 months old, already knows that comfort is not one specific body. Comfort is the sound of familiar voices, the smell of known fires, the warmth of known hands. This matters more than it might seem. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, including Meredith Small's research summarized in her book Our Babies, Ourselves, found that in foraging cultures, infants are held or carried nearly 90% of the time. They sleep in contact with another body. They nurse on demand, sometimes every few minutes, rather than on a schedule. They almost never cry alone. The result, Small documents, is that these infants cry significantly less overall than infants in Western industrialized cultures. Not because they are different babies, genetically, because they are never left alone long enough to escalate. Your ancient ancestors' baby did not have a crib, did not have a separate bedroom, did not have a nap schedule or a feeding window or a sleep training method. The baby had people. Always, in every direction. People. Now think about what modern parenting culture replaced that with. Agriculture arrived roughly 10,000 years ago, a blink of evolutionary time. With it came property, which came with enclosed space, which came with the idea of the household, one family unit, in one structure, responsible for their own children. The extended kin network that had functioned as the default operating system for child rearing for hundreds of thousands of years began to fracture. The nuclear family, two parents, children, a door that closes, is not ancient wisdom. It is a very recent experiment. And the stress, the isolation, the postpartum depression rates, the parental burnout, the sense that something is fundamentally broken, these are not signs of individual failure. They are the symptoms of a species trying to run ancient software on an architecture it was never designed for. Pediatrician and anthropologist James McKenna at the University of Notre Dame spent years studying mother-infant co-sleeping, a practice that the vast majority of human cultures throughout history have practiced and that remains the global norm in most non-Western societies today. His research found that when mothers and infants sleep in close proximity, their sleep cycles actually synchronize. The mother's breathing patterns influence the infant's arousal rhythms align. The biological monitoring system that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years only functions when the two bodies are close enough for it to function. The isolated infant in the separate room is not experiencing independence. It is experiencing a severing from the system it was built to be embedded in. That does not mean co-sleeping is always the right choice for every modern family. Context matters, and safety matters. But it does mean that the modern default, the closed door, the silent monitor, the alone baby, this is the experiment, not the ancient way. Here is what is almost certainly true about childhood 300,000 years ago. It was loud, it was physical, it was deeply embedded in a web of adults and older children who were all involved, whether they chose to be or not. Children learned by watching. They played in mixed age groups. They were not separated from adult activity but woven into it, carried to the foraging site, present at the fire, included in the making and mending and preparing that kept the band alive. Developmental psychologist David Lancey at Utah State University spent years cataloging childhood across cultures and found that in most traditional societies throughout history, children as young as 5 or 6 began contributing meaningfully to camp tasks, not as labor exploitation, but as natural participation in the life of the group. The separation of children into age-segregated classrooms and structured schedules is, again, extraordinarily recent. Your ancient ancestors' child did not have a curriculum, but by the time they were 10, they could read animal tracks, identify dozens of edible plants, start a fire, navigate the territory, and understand the social dynamics of every adult in the band. They learned because they were present. They were present because the band did not have a concept of keeping children apart from real life. None of this is a call to go back. We cannot. And for many people, the old way, the band, the fire, the constant company, would be a nightmare. Modern parents have privacy, autonomy, access to medicine, to clean water, to information. Their infants survive at rates that would have seemed miraculous to any ancestor. But when the baby won't stop crying and it is 3 a.m. and you feel completely, impossibly alone, your body is not wrong to feel that. It is remembering something true. It is reaching for a fire that isn't there anymore. It is listening for voices that, for 300,000 years, were always close enough to hear. You wake up when your body is ready. And for most of human history, when you woke, there was always someone there.